And what we will do is walk around this direction. This is what is known as Lawyers Row, right over here. Has since, probably before even the fourth courthouse, which was a Thomas Blackburn design, built in 1835, stood here, and then this building replaced it in 1901. But prior to that, there were a series of small historic, small law offices, like this one that is painted gray. Around between the 1840s and the 1850s, then there was 5 Lawyers Row, which is the red brick building, was constructed. So those two are contemporaries, as well as they're contemporary then with the 1 through 13 Court Place, which is the series of law offices behind here. So all of those historically associate with the period of the 1835 courthouse. So that's old antebellum Staunton and Augusta County court systems. Those are all purpose-built court buildings for law offices and clerks, things along that line. And I've documented all of that in your Preservation Commission packets with clear documentation, research done by the University of Virginia. 1903, the Eccles building was constructed, and that is proposed to be rehabbed, although it is not in our packet. That is not being reviewed at this point. The proposal is to tear down, part of the proposal is then to tear down, demolish 7 and 5 Lawyers Row, and to build then a 5-story tower. Will go right there, and then there's going to be some glass connectors that wrap around the building to connect everything together, and then that will continue all the way back to 11 South Augusta Street. We'll walk around there and we will see all of that, and see the effect of that. The height, mass, and scale of the proposed new construction probably would be best viewed if you had a photograph of it, if you stood over there in the parking lot and looked back. But the addition towers over the top. It is higher than the top of the courthouse and the surrounding buildings. In this immediate view shed, there has been an argument made that there are other tall buildings in town. Yes, they are. They are historic, and they were done in their time period. What we're talking about now is new construction under current zoning and current laws, not what happened in 1895 or 1920. For instance, there is a 5-story building, the Beverly Hotel, right over here. Do you see it? No, it's not part of this view shed. Now you can see it if you walk out to the street here. But again, when you look at it, its size, mass, its vertical expression and things, it relates to the buildings that are around it. From my review of looking at the proposed new construction on this building and wrapping around this building, it overwhelms, according to our guidelines, according to the Secretary of Interior guidelines, and according to the Secretary of Interior standards. It is too tall, it overwhelms, it's too massive for the buildings around here. It just overpowers the whole visual landscape. And I looked at it, and I've looked at it, and I've looked at the detailing on the building about breaking up the facade. Yes, there's fenestration, there are cornices, there's a way of breaking up the building. That has been somewhat addressed. It still doesn't get past the issue of height, scale, massing, and mass. And it just doesn't even get off the starting point of demolition. So if you go through all of those guidelines and standards and the specific local zoning code addressing demolition in the historic districts, it does not meet any of those standards listed for demolition. It doesn't do it. And I have provided comments point by point on every one of those for every of the 4 buildings that are proposed to be demolished, as well as point by point for the new construction to wrap around the courthouse. Everything has been documented and noted.
The important point, of course, is that we cannot evaluate the project building by building, building in a vacuum. Context is everything. And so these relationships Frank is talking about are really, really critical. And we all know that, but that's a key point to make.
But the proposal before last June was to do it all over here.
Yeah.
What's the historic report on that project?
This building was not included in the National Register nomination for the Beverly Historic District. At the time when that was done, probably 1976 when that survey was done, that was not considered historic. Philosophically, technically, today, if the county would like to put this property on the National Register, they probably could have it included in the district if they wanted to receive historic tax credits. But that would be a formal process of having it added. It is now 50 years old and older. It is, as much as people have told me over and over they don't like this building because they don't like the look of it, it is architecture definitive of its period. It really is. You have to remember, of all the modernist international style buildings were made of concrete that were being constructed after World War II. And that's what you see here is a product of that modernist time period. Yep.
Has there been any addressing? I understand that the new building will have a basement, and then below the basement you need to dig for footings, and they'll be digging footings down I don't know how many feet. So we're looking at 15, 20 feet worth of depth, maybe more, next to historically significant buildings all around it, many of which I would assume had hand-installed foundations.
Could we move away from the street to ask questions?
Let's,
it's a little hard to
Okay,
hear.
so let's walk around and go through Lloyd's. You're making a good point about the structural engineering. That's beyond the Historic Preservation Commission's purview.
Yes.
But other than that type of excavation work certainly can damage buildings around it.
And wouldn't it technically, probably, possibly be more expensive to try to build a building next to a historically significant?
If you're having to add extra time, labor, and project costs, yeah. So, still in 2015, this building did not have paint on it. Our zoning code and our guidelines specifically state do not paint original brick on buildings, and it has to do with the material not reacting well to it, and it traps moisture in the brick and causes a lot of deterioration. We've also noticed that it has become a maintenance problem with these buildings because they are built on a basically shallow foundation, and that we have a rising damp issue, which we'll see on some buildings back here, and that forces the paint back off the building. Actually forces, when you paint the building, it forces the water higher into the wall and causes more damage when you do it. But architecturally, if you look at this little building, and you look at the brick pattern, this is definitive of that 1840s, that early to mid 19th century construction, especially with people that were trying to accentuate the classical architecture. This is a Flemish bond pattern, so you have a header, stretcher, header, stretcher, header, stretcher, and in the fanciest of the buildings, the nicest ones, that every one of those headers is a glazed header. That's a brick that was set in a kiln. It's right next to the fire in the kiln, and it actually turns the end of the brick into glass. And so it looks like a piece of glazed ceramic, really. And so that was a very important thing at the time. Now this building has been repaired at some point because there's a running bond up here above top. But that doesn't diminish its historic significance at all. It just was repaired at one point. This building, you see, looks like a water table. This building is designed in a terms of classical architecture. It's doing a foundation and a water table. It has a Flemish bond brick pattern with very careful struck joints, thin joints. They go all the way up through the second floor, and then you'll see the brick patterning change because in 1891, the attorneys who owned the building had T.J. Collins add a third floor to it. So it became a Victorian building at that time. Originally, and then there's also an addition on the side of the building. Originally, according to the University of Virginia's research on the Virginia Mutual Assurance maps, and it describes it and shows that a portico was located right here. And you can see the brick has been patched in where this window is going down to the ground. And it describes that that portico faces the courthouse, and then there was a two-story portico on the back that faced New Street. So it was probably a nice little Greek Revival federal building here. So addition comes out, you know, I think if you look at the concrete here, you sort of see an idea of property line. Addition would come out, and then a glass connector, is my understanding, attaching to, but it's described as step back from, which is asked for in the guidelines, step back to, but still attached to the courthouse on this facade. So the majority of this detailing and things would be behind a glass wall now. Has had a story added to it, but it dates back to the 1840s. The addition for the courthouse will come to about right here. This will leave about a 5-foot alleyway, is my understanding, between this building and a wall.
Are there setbacks?
So you want me to go from the first floor to the first floor?
I don't know how it functions.
Big.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah. 5 stories. 5 stories.
This would be a shady spot.
Barrister's Row, the street would then be blocked off here. And then blocking off, so your access to these buildings would come from this direction. This is all building. All building. It encases and wraps around the back of the courthouse, attaches to, the architects have described it as you could walk into this, this new construction, and you will be able to see this facade and the courthouse, the whole courthouse, from a 2-story atrium from the inside of the building. It would require demolition of this is 1 through 13 Lawyers Row. I'm sorry, Court Place. 1 through 13 Court Place here. It requires the demolition of this structure. It then also requires the demolition of 11 South Augusta Street, which is the large commercial building you see here.
Demolishing it, they're not
Yeah, full demolition, full demolition. Part of the guidelines or the stipulations in the zoning about demolition is can the building does it have use? Does it have economic value? Is it structurally sound, in good condition? Okay, so these law offices were just in use. These were law offices until the law firm, they just retired last year. So they were in full use, and you'll see the other half of the building, because these are owned by separate corporations, that has a brand new roof on it. The building is in extremely good condition. This last office was added in the late 19th century. You can see the line on the brick right there. And then on the west end is one office that was added shortly after this one. The rest of the building dates to 1843. It was purposely built for law offices, actually by Augusta County, and then sold to individual attorneys. Alexander H.H. Stewart was instrumental in a number of very important historical issues with Commonwealth of Virginia, including trying to convince people not to go to war, Civil War, and he was unsuccessful. He was the Secretary of Interior of the United States. Secretary of the United States office was right there, okay? These are also offices of Virginia Supreme Court judges, appellate court judges, legislators. This is a significant historic site. It really is, in terms of Virginia history, in terms of the Civil War, in terms of Reconstruction of Virginia, and the new Constitution being developed for Virginia after Reconstruction. All these people had a hand in it.
And so who's in these buildings now?
No one currently, because Ben Black and Doug Nolan retired just last fall, I think, and so they've quit business. But
They own the
they
buildings?
were used. That was their office there, and that was their office over here. Right, the center section was being used by them right at that time. Personnel, very nice offices, perfectly fine. They also used five lawyers over here as some office, but mostly records that they've owned for years and years.
Do we know the principals in the corporations? Are they still owners?
Yep.
The buildings have been for sale after they retired.
Explain again how this new building is going to attach or not attach, or
Well, I don't. We've got what we received for this review is a schematic drawing of the building, which means you don't have construction drawings. You don't have every little detail worked out. However, it gives you an overall understanding. But it's described as being attached to this building, I believe, up to the second floor, and then stepped back from the building and going up.
so there would be a roof here.
And then it goes straight up another 2 stories.
And that's something that the commission can ask for often with applicants. We ask for additional details and additional drawings. And we certainly don't have a full set of plans for anything they're proposing at this
And if
point.
you go back into these areas too, fill in.
So just for scale, what do you consider the height of the piano factory? Is that 5 stories?
It's actually, we can go to the front. I'm trying to remember. It's 3 stories with a tall cornice on the front. So it's going another 2 stories. It's going to 81. They told us it was 81 feet tall. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what the height of Lady Justice is. So that would be an interesting reference point. But
Is there any other building in Stanton that's as tall as the one that's being proposed?
well, look at the Masonic Temple.
Masonic,
Maybe the top
and the
of the
Beverly.
Yeah, Masonic Temple, a clock tower. But it's within this context.
This sky is gone.
And yes, the Stonewall Jackson Hotel, but it's on a hill, and it's up there. And again, we're not reviewing projects that were done in 1924 or in 1896. We're reviewing a project according to the local zoning right now and the city's planning.
So we're looking at about 20 foot taller than that building coming above, up in the air, and all the way back to the end of that building. And then all the way down here, and all the way down here.
This is sort of the glass passage area in here, if I remember.
Right in here, and then somewhere right in here.
So you could see some of the architectural detail, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far the glass is. Anybody
Yeah.
remember? Pull it out of the package. Yeah, but it goes right in here. Yeah.
How does it work with them getting the alley?
Well, that's a little bit out of my bailiwick, but
Okay.
my understanding is that they would have to go before the planning commission, and there needs to be some sort of vacation of the city not that long ago designated this as a street. There seems to be a difference of opinion of whether that was just out of convenience for trash pickup, which they don't use it for, they do plow it.
But it has a name.
Barristers Row as a street. The county seems to think that they still own it as an alley. That it's not city's property. That they'll have to work that out amongst the attorneys.
As Frank said, that's a separate process.
Yeah, I just know that alleys are a strange thing in Stanton, the way
Right,
they.
in
They
Virginia.
really are. This one's even a little bit
Stranger.
different because it is publicly maintained, unlike most of the alleys in the city. So this would have to go through the planning commission, which would be a public hearing, and then it would go to city council, which would be a second public hearing before the alley could be vacated.
Who maintains this?
The city does.
City pays for it, even though the county says it's theirs.
No, Augusta County doesn't say it's theirs, they just want it.
No, they do.
They say it's there.
They believe it is theirs. They believe it is their property.
Well, they're There's another alley in Stanton that the city has agreed to maintain but didn't turn over, and that's one by Grace Christian Church, Calorama Alley. And they did that for safe passage of cars and
Questions? I mean, do you want to look at height and scale from the bank parking lot over there? Yes.
Can you just explain which of the remaining buildings we're looking at, if any, are being demolished?
This one and that one.
Not this green
Not
house?
that one. That's recently been sold and is going to be fully rehabbed. This obviously has been fully rehabbed and is a fantastic little building, done really well.
They were offered options and declined them on these two.
Yep.
Okay.
Then the red brick building and then the gray brick building would come down.
And is the Eccles building part of the plan in any way?
The only thing mentioned is that they would rehab that building.
they'd rehab it.
Communicate a passageway or something.
Does the county own the Eccles building?
They have an option for it now. They have an option on all these buildings.
Those are non-refundable.
Yeah, which is a little confusing to people because I think it's option on 9 properties, but remember this is divided into multiple different properties.
Excuse me, have they addressed any of the problems with flooding? I know they wanted to destroy so that they could
Well,
have to pay.
one of the challenges with this is that one of the reasons they want to build in this location is due to the flood designation. If you're standing at the southwest corner of the courthouse, you're actually in what's called a floodway. Okay, I encourage everyone, if you have questions about this, please go to the city's GIS map, the full map, okay? And then you have to go off over here on the right of the screen of your screen and click on the layers, and you need to click on the FEMA flood zones. Click them on and then take a look at where they are. You'll be quite surprised. But there are different levels here. So there's a floodway, which is the hardest and most critical location to build anything, and it's in fact recommended not to build anything in reality, right? But we have an existing community here. Then there is the flood zone. We are standing in a flood zone right now. This is a flood zone. This is the little blue area. So anyway, the Augusta Street out there is all in the floodway. It's a creek bed basically, okay? Can you build in a floodway in a flood zone? From my amateurish, semi-knowledgeable review of looking at the FEMA guidelines, I spent 4 hours on it Sunday morning. The FEMA guidelines, and then comparing them also, what's quite well detailed in Stanton's zoning, is that I believe you can build in these areas, but you need to build a flood-proofed building. You will have to meet all the FEMA modern guidelines for a flood-proofed building. Generally, if you were to look at the New Street parking garage, that is a flood-proofed type building. You need to build, your inhabitable space needs to be 1 foot above the, I've forgotten the term for it, but basically it's the highest flood zone level. It's like a BE something, BEA or something like that. But so anyway, so yeah, something could be constructed on, concrete stilts with parking below it. But that's the idea. If you wonder what something like that looks like in a modern context, in a modern building, get on Google Earth and fly into Roanoke and take a look at the Carillion Clinic along the river. It's all designed for water to flow through that parking area in a high-tech, state-of-the-art hospital above.
So Frank, folks, we've got other projects to look at, and so if you can point out anything that's not in our packet that we should look at while we're here, that would be great. And you folks, if you might have questions for Frank or the city, could follow up with him later.
Right.
Because unfortunately we've got, and you can see how big our packet is, we have 6 other projects on our agenda tomorrow night in addition to this one. So, and Frank's provided us with great background information, so I think we all feel pretty prepared.
Would it be okay,
So-
Janine, if we just went across and took
Sure.
a look?
We could look at
Sure.
scale and
Yeah,
context
that's
from over
fine.
there.
Before we walk over there, regarding, if I could piggyback on your comments about tomorrow night's meeting, As Deneen said, we have 6 other applications. They will start at 5:30. We will not get to this one until at least 6:30. If for some reason we finish those other 6 before 6:30, we'll wait. So please don't, I'd encourage you actually to participate through the phone. You can listen to it online or local cable. We just don't have the capacity for lots of people in the court, in the council chambers. So
if you end up standing outside, you probably wouldn't hear it as well as if you're tuning in, so to speak. So, but we greatly appreciate your interest and your dedication to preservation here. So yes, let's walk across.
One of several things.
One of the other issues to remember that if you're a landscape architect and you think about landscape features and things like these stone walls that have been here since 1901 and things, all that would go. Those little elements and things would all go away.
Sound like this is just an equal footing with all those little ordinary routine things. It almost sounds like there should be a whole separate meeting, maybe 2 or 3 of them, on this. Tenor on the city.
Well, I think the planning department felt like we could get all this done in one evening. We probably can. It's just going to be a long year.
we didn't know we were going to have the other 6 applications.
Well, this is certainly one of the biggest things that's happened since I've been around span for 20 years. This deserves running at
Keep in
the
mind,
top
this
of
is an active business, so we can't broadly traffic. So this new addition would rise up. Actually, it starts right here at this corner. It has an entryway right here, and it has some columns that are engaged into the brickwork, and they go up about 2 stories, with a cornice that then engages to the cornice of the historic courthouse, and then it rises up 5 stories. It has windows. It's articulated with cornices to break up the facade, and it goes all the way over to include, right up next to the small law office there. Again, 5 stories up. It will have what's called a sally port. It's a new term on me until we got into this courthouse stuff, but it is a place to drive in, a secure entrance to drive in prisoners and judges and people who need to be in there. And so it actually would be almost right in there. You'd be driving into almost sort of a garage opening.
So in this complicated corner, that's all going to be covered with a flat roof? You go up above the corner.
The 6 stories, above the 6 stories, 5 stories is a flat roof. But I don't think you'll ever be able to see a roof.
This part wouldn't go up 5 stories, would it?
My understanding is it goes right up to almost the cornice and then steps back away and goes up. I don't understand how they make that junction. I don't understand how it's connected. I don't understand to me, one of the comments I made in the review is that it's describing what would to me be a water trapping feature that could harm the historic building. It's going to be, that would be a challenge to design that so that you can shed the water away from the historic building and protect the brick and keep that. I mean, I'm sure a modern engineer can figure something out, but that's a tough one. Keep in mind that their full packet is available on the city website. So please go to that full packet and look at all of their renderings, and you'll see what I've seen. Just walk through it.
And you can also read Frank's review and the recommendations, all of which are based on our guidelines. And please be assured that the commission follows the guidelines.
Has
That's our
anybody
job.
been able to make that link work? Because Linda, when I went to the city website on Friday, Saturday, and today, I can't link in to get the packet.
Are you referring to the notice on the website that's got that says click online here? That was fixed this morning. Something wonky happened, so.
Okay.
Is that the submission packet you're talking about?
No, it's more than that. It's the full. It's my reviews. It's everything.
We saw your talking points, and I got the original submission packet, but that is more.
Yeah, but this is I cranked out about 250 pages of documentation. So, yeah.
Does anybody look at the effect on the cast of the sun, the shadow cast by that? I mean, imagine
Yeah, right.
this way
We were in
now.
New York when they almost took the shadows out of Lower Central Park.
I have not seen a study of that. That can be done quickly in AutoCAD and things like that.
So is there a proposed alternative plan that is preferable, that gives the kind of square footage they're looking for without tearing down any buildings?
That again is beyond the Preservation Commission meeting right now, but there were alternatives provided. There were studies done. There were studies done paid for by the county and some by the city in 2012, and then I think in 2016, 17. The 2012 study was intended to show rehabilitation of the circuit courthouse with the small additions out on the back here that provided accessible access, a sally port, and addressed all the concerns. It actually met and exceeded most of the security requirements, record storage, separation of victims and plaintiffs, and provided the courtrooms. Everything for the circuit court. Remember, in Virginia, you're talking about multiple separate courts, and so the other court functions are located in this other building, and that is your district court, your juvenile domestic courts, and they are generally, I can't remember what the exact figure is. They are cases with a value of less than $2,500 or something like that. So, so that's a different court system.
Are there things we can continue to do to help fight this? Are there things you all recommend?
Tell you the truth, I'm going to separate that advocacy issue from this meeting that we're having, because I'm not here to advocate. I mean, we're here to advocate on terms of the city's design guidelines and the city's zoning ordinance is what we're talking about today. We can have another conversation after I get through this process.